Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to take a look at the way the Tories are trying to present the economic data in a positive light, but also what's really going on when we apply some comparisons that Rishi Sunak would rather we did not. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So the government have started presenting a fair amount of economic and related data from the Treasury in order to try and show improvements since 2010. And the charts they are presenting are certainly compelling. For example, today I'm going to take a look at a Treasury chart purporting to show that the UK GDP has outstripped the other major economies of Europe since 2010. But I'm also going to show how, with a closer look at the data, it doesn't look all that impressive at all. And I'm also going to refer to some great work by Ben Chew from the BBC, but I want to weave in some of my own analysis as well. But I will also point out, I've seen some Brexiteers sharing this chart thinking, oh, the Remainers won't like this. Oh, the Remainers won't like this. It's thinking, you're having a laugh, mate. This shows Brexit in a very bad light. They're just too thick to understand it. My goodness me, they're thick. This chart, as I'll be showing, just demonstrates how much our economic growth depended upon EU membership. But to begin with, this chart shows that they have taken 2010 as a base. I note it doesn't say when in 2010. I know it does say when in 2023. It says April 2023. It doesn't say in which month from 2010 they're taking it. But we'll say presumably sometime around the time the Tories came to power. Maybe it was May. Don't know. Doesn't matter. It's fine. It shows that GDP in the UK has increased more so than other European powers within the same time frame. But the Conservatives are not in competition with those other countries come the election. They're in competition with Labour. So Labour were in power for 13 years. This chart also shows 13 years of Tory rule. Excellent. This chart says they got their information from the IMF. So I did too, except I had to get the very latest from the World Bank. I assume they don't mind. So by my calculations, UK GDP grew by 23% between 2010 and now. Happily, the Treasury chart seems to show the same. So that's good. We're in agreement about how we're calculating this. We don't need any arguments about methodology. We're using the same one. So the Tories have grown the economy by 23% in terms of pure GDP. Nice one. So how did Labour do in that 13-year period they were in power? They grew it by 59%. And the Tories don't get to whine about world events. Labour had the banking crisis to deal with. That 59% was after the banking crisis. If I'd have done it before, it'd be way higher. So Labour grew GDP by 59% in 13 years, and the Tories have grown it by 23% in 13 years, sorry. Now, if Labour do not bring this up very loudly during the election campaign at least, if not sooner, then I don't know what they're playing at. I will also point out that if you decide to choose a different base, say when we left the EU, the UK has actually had the lowest GDP growth of all the countries. In fact, it's gone down. And we should choose 2020. That's a good base for two main reasons, isn't it, really? First, it's when we left the EU. If Brexiteers want to compare GDP growth amongst European nations, fine by me. Shall we do it from when Brexit happened? Second, it's also when Rishi Sunak got his hands on our economic policy. Early 2020, that's when he became Chancellor. He is the one the country will hold to account on the economy. So why not just choose the time he took over from the Treasury? Two birds with one stone. Start of Brexit and the start of Rishi Sunak being in charge of our economic policy. Of course, the Tories will want to avoid that comparison like the plague. Not that this is a good analogy, because ironically they did very little to avoid the actual plague. But now I'll move on to Ben Chew's analysis, because what he decided to do was look under the bonnet. Because if the Tories are going to point to a correlation, look, GDP grew while we were in power more than other countries, then you go, okay, so what's the cause of this correlation? Because correlation is not causation in itself. So what did the Tories do? What did you do to stimulate that economic growth? Well, Chew has the answer. So he decided to bring GDP per capita into the mix. Now, we're still ahead of most of these countries, but behind Germany. So what happened? Well, Chew notes that our immigration levels were higher than all those other countries. In other words, that GDP growth, which even the Treasury chart shows was steepest before we left the EU, was powered by migration. So the thing that the Tories did to achieve that Europe-busting GDP growth, albeit way lower than Labour achieved before them, was in having looser immigration rules than the other major EU economies. Something else that Chu points out is that people aren't bothered about GDP growth, but household living standards. This is crucial. This is the main point, really. And this is exactly right, and I've said as much myself. Governments like to talk about GDP, but comparing GDP growth of different countries only works if you have the same mechanisms for wealth distribution. But wealth distribution in the UK is exceedingly poor. So even when the country does well, people don't always feel it. We have the 5th highest GDP in the world, but we're not even in the top 20 by living standards. And this is really important. When the Tories thrust graphs or charts of unemployment or GDP in front of people's faces, all Labour have to do is ask the electorate, are you feeling the benefit of these charts? Because the Tories are telling you that they're doing marvellously with the economy. They're telling you that your living standards are brilliant and that you should stop complaining. Do you feel well off compared to when Labour were last in power? I'll post a link to Chu's entire Twitter thread, where he also links to another he did from last year showing that the UK economy has actually underperformed since 2010 when you look at the detail. But I want to emphasise the key point here, because I've made it myself for pretty much as long as this channel's been going. Now, obviously, the average voter is not going to read all this detail. So they're just going to see the charts that the Conservatives throw in front of their face, and then maybe a counter chart that Labour do if they do it right. But if things are ticking along nicely, you can sort of show people charts and get them to believe that actually the government's doing well. You can show people this chart and they'll go, oh, they're doing all right. After all, if they're getting by, they've got no reason to disbelieve it, do they? But when people are struggling, when people have to choose between eating and heating in the winter, and they didn't used to, or they're struggling to go on the nice holidays they used to be able to afford, or even just unable to go into the sea because, well, you know, then people aren't going to be impressed by a chart which purports to show things going well. Because those people will ask, well, if things are so great, how come I'm struggling? I work hard. How come I can't afford a decent standard of living? I used to be able to. I'm working just as hard as I did 10 years ago. What's happened? And this latest move by the Tories to present data in a way which shines the best light on them, absolutely the right strategy. It's what they should do. I keep saying Labour should do the same thing. Present charts, put it through people's letterboxes. No great wall of text. Simple chart, chuck it through the letterbox. You know, the Tories are getting hammered in the polls, and not just on voting intention. The Tories are losing out to Labour on everything, including handling of the economy. Absolutely the right move to fire back. But it really is very simple to expose the weaknesses in their data presentation if Labour could just get better at their messaging. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.